Hey guys, can you hear me? Put in the chat if you can hear me and everything, and you can see video. Let's just see if this is all working okay. Ooh, let's just wait for the chat to catch up. So we've got, there should be like 150 something people signed up today, which is kind of nuts. I don't think everyone's going to make it because of time zones and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of a load more than last time, which is kind of cool. So yeah, it's great to see everyone. There's some names that I recognise from last year as well, which is really cool. Hopefully you've had a good year. I've literally just not left the house since the last Christmas one. I'm sure a lot of us are the same. So I've just been stuck at this desk waiting for the next Christmas thing that we're going to do. So yeah, I hope it's been a good year for everyone. The industry seems to be doing insanely well at the moment. So I hope you guys are making the most of it. So what I'm going to be doing today is we're kind of going to be creating this shot here. Now, so we'll be going through this one, and Vish is noticing the fireplace in the back. Yeah, I tried to make it as Christmassy, like up the Christmassy game this year as well. Word of warning as well is, my dog, there's like a little shit dog around here that decided to attack my dog. So he's currently got the cone of shame on. So at some point he might get like stuck somewhere, and I'll have to nudge him a little bit. But at the moment he's snoozing, so we're all good. But if that does happen, you might just have to allow me just to quickly nudge him in the right direction so he doesn't get caught in anything. But yeah, looking super crispy, which is good. So we're going to be creating this shot together. So what I'd love you to do, if you got, ideally you'd have two monitors here, and you'd have kind of me on one monitor and then Nuke on another. And we can just basically work through the shot together. Any questions as we go, just drop them in the chat. And at the end, what we'll do is like a general industry Q&A, basically. Where you can ask any industry-related questions that you got. I don't know, like contracts, salaries, companies, countries, films, projects, whatever it is. Feel free to ask away. Something else as well is that this is all going to be recorded. So at the end, once YouTube's done whatever the hell it does under the hood, I'll kick a link out to everyone so that you can watch it back whenever you want. But ideally, it would be really cool. Like if you fancy joining along, absolutely, like that's really cool as well. So we're going to be doing this one, and then I've also got this one as well, where we've got this like interesting cube thing. You're going to have to bear with me a little bit as well, because I've got my graphics cards a little old. But you can see we've got this kind of interesting stuff. So we're going to create something like this as well and go through both of them. And then, I mean, something else as well that I want you to do is like just experiment with this stuff. I remember I had some downtime on a project once, and I was just experimenting with all this stuff, and it's kind of fun to do. There you go. And then you can just like sell them all as NFTs, right? And we'll all be millionaires by next year. So there we go. Cool. So I'm going to jump into Nuke now. Feel free to do the same. Again, I'll be kind of going fairly slow through this stuff. And again, any questions, if you get stuck at all, just whack it in the chat. I think there's a bit of a delay. I'm not 100% sure what the delay actually is, but if there is, like, if you've got any questions, just whack them in the chat. So I've got blank Nuke. Let's just save this somewhere. Call this real script. That's always good. Cool. So blank Nuke. Ideally be using Nuke X. I think Nuke Particles only Nuke X. I'm going to just set our settings over here. So we're going to hit S over here, and we're going to make this HD. And we should be good. Perfect. Cool. So everyone should have that. Now, what we need to do to start off with our like Nuke particle kind of abstract shot is an emitter. So we're going to make a card. And for those of you that aren't really familiar with Nuke's 3D space, just hit tab with your cursor up here, and it's going to take you into Nuke's 3D space. And if you use any kind of 3D packages, actually the new Nuke, apparently it's quite fancy in Nuke's 3D space now, it's all changed. But you can go to edit preferences, and I believe it's viewer handles here. You can just set the 3D control type. So if you use like a certain other bit of 3D package or whatever, you can, like for instance, I learned Maya originally before I learned Nuke. So I just set it to Maya now. And I've just kind of, if it's ever set to Nuke, it just looks like I'm kind of comping with a brick. I always forget what the hotkeys are. So we're going to take our card, and we're then going to select it and hit tab and write particle emitter. So now what's going to happen is our particles are basically going to come up the front, as you can see. like this. Now they're going to get to frame 10 and then nothing's going to happen. Now the reason why nothing happens is just because the lifetime set to 10. So they're getting as far as they can in their 10 frames lifetime and then nothing happens. So if we just up this number, let's say to 11, now they get as far as they can in 11 frames and then nothing happens. Now if we wanted them to go further, we could just adjust the velocity as well. So if I increase their speed or velocity, therefore they're going to end up going further within their lifetime. So we can adjust this as well. Now, what we want to do in this case is I'm not so fussed about that stuff. What we want to do is actually kind of have this kind of interesting shape. Let me just get the image back. So we're going to try and create this kind of image and then we're going to play around with it. So what we can do is, let's just double click our card and we're going to bring it up, and I'm going to, with my hotkeys, I'm going to hold down Control and just spin it so it faces down. You could also just put kind of 90 in here as well, and then you'd be good. So everyone should now have like a card that's just facing down, shooting the particles down, and we're going to have the same thing. It's going to get as far as it can in 11 frames, and then you're not going to have anything. By the way, shout as well. I've just realized, shout if my face is covering any Nuke Properties panels. So here's our card, and it's going down. Now, what I like to do is to give it a bit more randomness is originally this is set to points. Now, what this means is the particles are just going to be emitted from the points of the card. So this isn't very good when you're trying to create randomness in a shot. So ideally what would happen is we just go here and we set this to bounding box. And now you can see they're just like randomly distributed within this area. So most of the time when I'm doing particles, I use bounding box pretty much all the time, because then it hasn't got like a clear like emission point. You can set this to faces and it'll be kind of emitted anywhere in the face and edges, but bounding box just keeps things nice and neat. And again, like you might want to emit from the points, like that's totally valid if you do, but if you don't, then bounding box is the one to use. So what we're going to do now, by the way, actually, because we set this to bounding box, we can just set these to 0, 0, because we don't need any polys in the rows and columns. So what we're going to do is we're going to shoot this out basically, and then we need it to hit this sphere like this. So let's actually shoot these particles out. Now, for instance, in this case, I kind of want the image to look good frame 1. So what that would mean is I need to kind of like kick all the particles out before the shot even starts, right? So what we can do is we can say, okay, let's start frame -2, and I'm going to, on frame 0, you can see I'm selected 0 here, I'm hitting the arrow keys on my keyboard. I'm going to go to frame 0, and I'm going to just set the emission rate to a number, and then frame 1, I'm just going to set it to 0. So now basically there's going to be no particles emitted after that. So I'll let you kind of like catch up if you're not sure. So what I've done is I've made a card, made it kind of face down, and then I've got a particle emitter as well. And I've made it start frame kind of -2, so 2 frames before the start of the shot. And then I've just set the lifetime to 11. We'll change that, but for now that's what we've done. Everyone all good? Everyone who's kind of working along, doing okay in the chat? Oh my god, the delay. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to carry along, but if you're stuck, write in the chat and you should be good. So what we're now going to do is we need to kick out these particles. So we're just going to up the velocity a little bit. So now they're going to get this far within their life, frame 11, and then turn off. And now what we need to do is we need to make them hit this sphere, right? So we need to make them hit this sphere somehow. So how are we going to do that? Well, what we can do is, oh, 1 second, my Nuke decided to just close, and so did my internet. There you go. So what we can do is we're going to make a particle bounce node. Like this. And this allows us to basically bounce our particles off something. So if I scale this up, what you should see, let me up the lifetime as well. Like this. So now they're going to live for, let's do 100. Let's just keep them on. So they're going to kind of hit that and then bounce up. It's kind of interesting. You can do some really cool stuff with this, by the way. Like if I rotate this kind of at an angle, you'll see they kind of bounce down. If I make it so they don't bounce quite as much, you can do some really interesting stuff with this. this thing and then up the friction. There you go. So just so you know, by the way, the two of these, so this one is kind of like one side of the plane, and this is the other side of the plane. So basically, if you drag one, it's not doing anything. Just drag if the external isn't doing anything, drag the internal. So now you can see what they do is they end up flying out. Now, if I had a gravity under here, it would just pull them back down again. So you end up getting this like, and then they just kind of slide down. So you can do all sorts of interesting stuff with it once. So now they're going to bounce more, as you can see. It's kind of cool. But anyway, we're not going to be using the particle gravity for now, but there you go. There's something else you can play around with. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to... oh my god, someone doesn't even see particles. Wait, whoever doesn't see particles, do you mean you don't have the particle nodes, or you don't have... you just literally nothing's being emitted? I don't know if Nuke Indie works with Nuke Particles, man. You might need to get a trial Nuke license on it. So wait till the video recording and then maybe grab a trial Nuke license and you can have a play around with it. So yeah, sorry about that. So now we've got this, we want to basically hold them in place. So I'm going to basically just whack the friction up and turn the bounce right down. And now what should happen is you can see they basically just hit the thing and then land. And that's okay, but we need this like nice shape, right? So what we're going to do is, you can see there's this little geometry input here. So we can hit tab and type sphere and connect that in. I'm just going to bring this a little lower. And you see nothing's happening at the moment, so we need to change some settings here. So if I double click the particle bounce, what we're going to do is in the, I believe it's actually here, and if we go to object and we go to input. So now what's going to happen is it's going to take whatever's connected in here. Now, what you can do, by the way, is if you've got like an Alembic file or something from the 3D department, you can just go to the read, you can bring in a read geo node, bring in that Alembic file, and you can get particles to stick to it, which is kind of cool. You can do some really interesting stuff when you like read geometry into Nuke Particles. But for now, we're just going to use a sphere. So as you can see, now we're getting this kind of stuck to it. And we're going to just this. Let's have a look. So now they're gonna, oh, it's just gonna read cache. 1 second, why is that not doing anything? Oh, that's why, because the sphere is so big they can't even stick to it. So check your sphere size. Oh, this, can you see? The uniform scale here is scaling up the sphere. Oh, Antonio's saying it is working in Nuke Indie. So have a play, have a play. Perfect. So we're just going to bring this here. Let's just set this back to, so I'm going to make a fresh particle bounce. To plug the particles in and geo in. And then I'm just going to set this to input again. So now we have this, and you can see they're bouncing off the sphere there. So now we're just going to bring the bounce down and the friction up. So now you can see they're sticking to that thing. So what we're going to do is just make the sphere a little bigger. If you're not seeing any particles in the viewer, check what frame you're on. Like, or maybe connect like a card in there or something. And just double check you've got this basically, and have it start at whatever frame your first frame is. So if it's frame 1, then you can just drop frame 1 in there and then play it through and you should see something, some dots. Also, if you can't see anything, just whack the size right up as well. That's what I do. Generally when I work with Nuke Particles, I whack the size up so I can actually see what I'm doing. And then when it comes to render, I'll then adjust the size later. So now what you can see is we actually have these particles stuck to the sphere, which is pretty cool. And we can actually adjust the size of this so that we get the desired effect. Like maybe we want to bring this up a little bit or something, and then bring this down. And you can see now these are kind of the particles we're going to be rendering that are stuck to here. Now, if you want more or less, you can just adjust the emission rate. So let's go back to our frame where we set the emission rate keyframe, and we can just bring this up as well. And then when it plays through, you're going to have more particles hitting that sphere, as you can see. Cool. I'm just going to leave it there a little bit. I'll let anyone catch up if they need to. So what I did there is I connected a sphere into it. into our particle bounce. Yeah, exactly. So what Rish asks is basically like with a sphere, it hasn't got two sides, right? It's kind of like solid. So only the external one matters with a sphere. The internal is not going to matter. That would only matter if we were there were particles inside the sphere bouncing around. I've never tried it. I guess you could do that. Maybe they just keep bouncing off all the walls, but in this case, yes, you're exactly right. All the external bits are where it's going to be hitting. So only the top one will work. Something else you can do, by the way, is you won't need to do this in this case, but you can kill all the particles that hit this as well. So you can have all those particles disappear when it goes through, which is kind of interesting. But we want to keep them alive. So there you go. Give you a few more minutes to catch up, and then we'll start up again. So you should have something that looks a bit like this. Now again, don't worry about matching it exactly, but you should have something that looks a bit like this. And what I've done again is I've connected a card that faces down. I've then emitted some particles from it, and I've gone all the way back to frame 0 and emitted on that frame, and then frame 1 I haven't. And then, I mean, this actually doesn't matter too much, but you can do that. And then what I've done is I've made a particle bounce, and I've connected a sphere into it, and then just set this to input, so that now it's going to use the sphere in order to actually bounce these particles off. So now you should have something like this. Then what we're going to do, so actually another cool thing about this, by the way, is if we wanted to kind of just mix up the geometry it's stuck to, we can add a displaced geo node in here and just make a noise node. And if we connect this in, it's now basically going to pull a luma key off the noise if we set its luminance, and it's going to displace this based on that noise pattern. So now if I do this and adjust the scale, what you should see is this kind of like crazy, actually let me make a checkerboard, you might be able to see this a little bit more easily. There you go, we've now got this kind of like distorted thing that is bouncing off, which means now when we look at our particles, you start getting some interesting stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Antonio's exactly right. Like, you should just put a card and a particle emitter and it should then just work. So now you can see they're stuck to this kind of like weird shape, which is kind of interesting. And something you could do, by the way, is you can run, if you adjust the Z here of the noise, so if I set a key here, and then go to frame, let's say 40, and adjust this number, you're then going to have the sphere should now move over time, as you can see. So again, if you wanted to render this as a shot, you could do this and it'll give you some like interesting effects with the stuff stuck to it. I'm not going to do that for now, but you can totally have a play around with that. So now we have our particles that are stuck there. Well, that bit there looks a bit odd though, so I'm just going to adjust this until I get a pattern I like. Cool, that looks kind of cool. Then we can just adjust the scale a little bit in our displaced geo. Bring this down just a touch, because I just want to add a little bit of randomness to it. So there you go. So you should now have something like this. So now let's actually kind of like render this thing out. So to do that, it's exactly the same as rendering anything out in Nuke's 3D space. So let's hit tab, and we're going to type scalar and render node, and we're going to connect the scene into the particle bounce and the camera as well. We're going to make a camera here and connect that into here. And then we just need to position our camera. So with the properties panel open here, double click it, click the camera to get the properties, move it into place so that you can see that stuff, frame it, and then while viewing the scalar and render node, you can just hit tab in the viewer and it's now going to flick between. Like that. Move it back a little bit, then we're good. So frame 33 is our nice frame. So I think you can use frame holds with here now. So you can actually use frame holds on underneath the particles, which is kind of cool. So you could kind of pick your favorite frame there, or you could frame hold underneath your scalar and render node. It's kind of up to you how you want to work in regards to this thing. So you could put it here. I'm going to put it there for now. I'm not quite sure which one is quicker, but take your pick. So now we've got this. What we can do is actually start like adjusting the depth of field and stuff. I mean, I'm going to adjust my camera slightly and have it move in just a touch so it takes up a little bit more room. That's kind of cool. Let's just center it a little bit more. Like that. A little trick as well that I like to just use, and this one I'm using Nuke's 3D space in general, I'll generally make a scene node underneath here and then connect the camera in, just so that then I can view the scene and see everything together. What I find is if you're viewing here sometimes, can you see, it doesn't show me the camera, which can be quite annoying when you're working. So if you just make a scene node and connect it in with your anything you're doing in Nuke's 3D space with the camera connected as well, like this, it allows you to see everything. So I can just kind of select the scene, view it, and now I can see everything I want to see, which is pretty great. Like it's super handy that. So I'd really suggest working like that. Now in this case, let's make this a little bit more efficient. We kind of want to make this as kind of quick as possible. We're not going to use motion vectors. And motion vectors are used when you're trying to kind of fake motion blur in Nuke using a vector blur node or other techniques. So we're not going to want to do that. So let's click this and we're just going to hit off. And suddenly you'll see, so this pink and blue here, these are motion vectors. So that's telling Nuke that, basically telling you that it's kicking out motion vectors from the scalar mirror node. This is depth and this is red, green, blue and alpha. Those are the obvious ones. So if we set this to off, now you should be able to see that we're getting rid of that stuff and we're all good. It's pretty handy. Now, what you might want to do is you might want to up the kind of aliasing here as well, just so you get nicer kind of softer edges on stuff. I'm not that worried about that, but you could totally do that. Once you've got your desired look, feel free to kind of play around with aliasing and things. And if your particles were outside the visible frame and you want to use lens distortion at some point, you just want to adjust the overscan here. And what this is going to do is it's just going to give you a bit more overscan so that you can then lens distort if needed, which is pretty cool. So once we've got this, these particles are a little too big for me. So what we're going to be doing is we're now going to make them a touch smaller, like this. It's kind of cool. So we'll take that. And now we can actually start defocusing these things, making them look interesting. So that's our base. And by the way, again, you can plug any geometry you want in there. It could be a cube, whatever it is you want to do. Just whack any geometry in there and it's kind of cool. So so now we want to do some defocus. So what's the best way to do defocus in scalar render node? Well, actually, we want to use the Z defocus node. And for those of you, some of you might kind of be... when you use this node, you maybe just click down the math and hope for the best. That's not the way to work. Like, if you're working like that, that's not a fun way to do this stuff. So actually what you want to do is convert this to depth. So to do that, we hit tab and make an expression. So at the moment, I believe the depth channel is doing, well, in the scalar render, it's doing the depth divided by 1. So if, for instance, I view this particle here in the depth channel, it's 0.1 units away. Whereas if I pick this one at the back, the value actually gets smaller. And that's kind of crazy, right? Like that's if you ask me, hey Josh, how far is that car away from us? And I said, oh, that car's kind of 1 meter away. Yeah, I have to, for those of you using different units, you have to convert, but let's say it's 1 meter away. And then he said, hey Josh, how far is this window that's in front of us away from us? And I said 50 meters. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what's happening right now in Nuke. Yeah, if they're jittering, you just want to make sure the friction is 1. Really, like up the friction, it should be 1 and 0. That's probably why they're jittering. So yeah, but I mean, if I'm honest with you, the frame hold's going to fix all of that, Rish. So it's kind of up to you how you want to fix it. Like that should fix it, but if it doesn't, just put a frame hold in. So as I was saying, like with the depth pass, the value's going down as things get further away, which is completely wrong, right? So what we need to do is actually convert it back to true depth. And to do that, this is a really useful thing to remember, by the way. So if you just learn one thing from today that you didn't know, learn this. So put an expression node directly underneath, set this to depth, and then we do 1 divided by depth dot z. And the z needs to be a capital Z. And now what you can see, our depth has now kind of changed and it's gone crazy bright. So let's just sample here. If I view this, you can see it's now 11. And if I view this one at the back, it's now a value of 10. And if I view this one, it's 9. So you can see the closer particles to us are now smaller in depth than the furthest ones away. And this is true depth now. So that's exactly how you want to be working whenever you're using the Z defocus doing this stuff. Super, super important. Because now you're not just going to be adjusting down the math hoping, which is never, again, I've seen people do that sometimes when I've been working at companies. It's like the worst thing in the world when they're just struggling to get that stuff done and make something look good. So what we can do is just set this back to RGBA. Now we've fixed our depth. And I'm going to adjust our focal point. So if I adjust my focal point here, all it's doing, by the way, this is just a color picker. So it's going to the depth channel and sampling the value. So you can see this is set to 9.2. So if I go here, for instance, it says 11. So let's just check the depth channel there. Okay, yeah, it's 11.66, and that's exactly what it sampled here. So all this is doing, it's just going into the depth channel and sampling the value from there. That's all it's doing, which means you could manually adjust this. If I, for instance, really wanted this particular particle in focus, I could go to the depth channel. Okay, it's 9.9 here, so we're going to do 9.9, and you should be good. If you haven't got anything in the depth, then your camera's probably not facing the particles. Yeah, it will always kick out of depth. Like if you've got a dark purple box here, which you should have, and you're not seeing a depth pass, it means it's not facing anything. So yeah, just check your camera on that one. I'll let everyone catch up a little bit. So what I did there is I created an expression node underneath the scanner render node, set this to depth, and put 1 divided by depth.z, and the z has to be a capital Z. And then I put a ZD focus directly underneath, and I was just playing around with the focal plane, showing you that we can kind of sample a pixel if needed, or a particle, and it's going to sample the depth channel from that particle. Everyone doing okay? Let's see. I think we're okay. I'll carry on in a minute. Nothing in the chat. Kietzi, I hope you got this working. Apologies if you didn't. Again, drop me an email afterwards, by the way, if you get stuck on anything. Like, it's absolutely fine to do. Just drop me an email on my website, the Compositing Pro one that you signed up for this on, and I'll happily answer them. Cool. Well, the chat is quiet, so I'm going to carry on. So now we've converted our depth using this here. What we're going to do is double click the ZD focus, and we can now set this to depth. Like this. So now what we can do is we're going to sample a particle like this one, and we're going to now adjust the size and maximum. Now, if you want to see what's in and out of focus, all you got to do is go to the result and hit focal plane setup. And this should make everything green, I believe, that's in focus, and then red what's in front, and then blue what's behind. So someone asked a great question. When using CG that comes with a depth pass, do you need to do that expression as well? No, you don't. Now, something to bear in mind, though, is make sure the units are the same. So, for instance, when I was at NPC Advertising, they measured all their depth in a thing called decimeters, which is basically a value of 1 in the depth pass in your CG equals 10 meters. And I can't remember what it is in Nuke, exactly the units. I think you can set them somewhere. But I remember what I had to do is I had to basically divide my CG depth pass by 10 in order to kind of make it so that Nuke depth values and the CG rendered depth values were in the same world. So it's always worth asking your lighters, what units is my depth pass rendered in? But no, you shouldn't need to do this expression here. It's just for the scanner and render node. Good question. That's a really good question. So now we've got this, we can kind of see here what's going to be in focus using the green. So we're going to view the ZD focus node. I'm going to set this back to result. And what you should start seeing is, and I'm sure you guys have got better graphics cards than me. I have a gaming laptop I do most of the stuff on, so which is way more of a beast than my 9-year-old machine. So yeah, which is going to be updated next year, I believe, if I have time to sort it all out. So you can see as I adjust the size and maximum, now we're going to start getting even more defocus. And if you wanted there to be kind of a bigger range of what's in focus, you can use the depth of field here. So if I really bring this up, what you should start seeing is you're going to start having like your particles in and out of focus like this, which is kind of cool. Now, a little trick. I wouldn't use this on this particular project, but a little trick for you. If you ever want to kind of do cheap everything out of defocus stuff, and you don't want to use a defocus node or a Z defocus, you can use a node called a convolve node instead. And it's going to come up with an error, but if I, for instance, make a constant node here and put a roto shape underneath and draw a little star with my roto, I know that's not exactly the best star, but luckily us compers don't need to make stars that often, so it's all good. So now we've got a star like this in the alpha. If we connect it to the filter, and now go here, let me just untick the GPU, you can see now we have stars exactly where our stuff is. So you can use this to defocus as well, but if I scale this down as well, I'm going to scale down the star, you can see now we have little stars everywhere. And then what you generally do, you can run this over like spec passes and all sorts of stuff. And then we can just plus this over. You can see now you've got little stars everywhere. It's very cool. Again, I wouldn't do it for this project, but you totally can do that if you want to. Let's bring this over here. Someone's asking what version of Nuke I'm using. I'm not sure. I think it's 11. I haven't updated it for ages because I don't know the new shuffle node. I'm going to be honest with you. And there's a few other things that I just know work in this version of Nuke, so I just don't update it. Yeah, I'm sure I will. I mean, maybe if everything goes towards Unreal Engine stuff, then I'll update it, but and use try out the new Unreal Editor. But for now, like this gives you everything you need to use. So there you go. So there's my out of focus stuff. So what do we do now? Well, again, let's be efficient. So from this point down, we don't need the Z defocus node, right? So we're going to hit tab again and put a remove node in there. And we're going to set this to keep. And we're going to set this to RGBA. Like this. So we can do this now. And let's set this to RGBA. So now what we've done is we've just removed our depth pass, basically. So if we just go to here, what you can see is we remove that dark purple box, and now we've got rid of our depth, and everything's going to be nice and quick. So it's worth, especially when you're working with CG as well, this is a really good trick just to keep things nice and quick, basically. Someone mentioned that this convolve trick, yes, you can use it with this filter as well. So if I connected this into here, and I set this to filter shape image, and I've got alpha here as well, it would actually run that through as well, which is kind of cool. Now the advantage of using this, by the way, is it's super quick. Like, it's so quick to use. So if ever you've got like a background that's all the same amount of out of focus or something, convolve nodes are a really nice little trick to keep your defocus pretty quick. You can also, if you've got like a bit of lens dirt, you can kind of like cut out one of the bokeh shapes and run that through there here, which is really nice. So here's our Z defocus, and we've removed our depth pass, which is really great. So now let's start messing around with this thing and making our beautiful £1 million NFT. So I'm going to, in this case, gamma down, which is going to increase more contrast into the shot. And I'm going to control click on this little color wheel. And for those of you that never control clicked on that color wheel, you're probably going to get something like this, and it's going to look like this. If you've got this, all you're going to do is go to the side and drag this all the way out like this, and then you're going to hit the HSV and TMI. HSV and TMI are incredibly useful whenever you're like doing client notes or grading CG. I did a course actually with a Foundry on this. It's on my website as well and on my YouTube channel, so maybe you can find it if you want to learn a little bit more about that. So I'm just going to pump a load of blue in there. Wow, that's kind of cool. So we've gone contrasty and we've gone a bit blue. So now we're getting this kind of image, which is pretty cool. And now what I want to do is make those little stalks that were in the image. So how did I do that? Well, what I did is I hit tab, make a God rays node. So a lot of you probably think of this node kind of, well, to do what it says on the tin really, and make God rays come out of clouds or something like that. But actually you can do a whole load of fun stuff with it. Like I use this node for chromatic aberration. It's a trick I learned at ILM. It's really awesome. For that, it's like, you look on Nukepedia and these big kind of chromatic aberration gizmos, and everyone's use God rays, set this to RGB, undo green and blue, and then you can scale. And now you're basically going to have, oh, one sec, let me show you this on a checkerboard. You can see now, it's way too much. But you can see you can actually scale this. So if we just do one, there you go. There's your chromatic aberration. It's kind of cool. And the reason why it's worked so well, by the way, don't use a transfer node set to scale, because what's going to happen is like a transfer node set scales everywhere uniformly. So for instance, if I do this, I mean, again, I'm going to have to shuffle out every channel, which I can't be bothered to do. But if I did this, it's going to scale up everywhere uniformly, basically. Whereas if I do it this way, it's going to scale more on the edges, as you can see. So that's why God rays for chromatic aberration is really nice. Oh yeah, so John asked, how do I make it more contrasty? It's the gamma. So if you gamma down, it's going to make your image or whatever you're connected to more contrasty. Gamma up is less contrasty. And I just nudge some blue in. So if you then want to add change the brightness or add a color, it's generally going to be in the gain. So now let's make those stalks with the God rays node. And I can actually adjust this center point. So let me adjust it down here. And watch what happens if I scale this to something less than 1. It starts pulling everything towards the center point. And I could go nuts with it, but let's keep it a little more like that for now. And you can see we've got these kind of steps here. And that's this bit here. So you can up the samples by just adjusting the steps. And now you've got these clean little lines. And then what we're going to do is going to hit M on the keyboard to make a merge. And plus this over. So I'll just recap what I did. Let me just do it to the side. So what I did is I put a grade node in. Gamma down to make it more contrasty. So gamma down to make it more contrasty. Control click on the color in the gain and add a color. Let's do a different one this time. Close that. And then what I did is I made a God rays node to the side. Brought the center point down and brought the scale down. And that's going to now pull everything towards the middle. You're going to get these kind of like little dotty bits. This is where the samples aren't enough. So I just up the steps. And then you plus this over. So M on the keyboard. B pipe goes into the grade. A pipe into the God rays and plus over. And there you go. Now, that's already worth kind of maybe a couple of million. But now we've got to kind of jazz it up even more. So what can we do? Well, let's add some glow to it. Now, I wouldn't... by the way, please just use an exponential glow. Don't use Nuke's regular glow node. Find an exponential glow node on Nukepedia. Incredibly important. So let's connect our exponential glow up to this. And now we've got some glow. Now, what you generally want to do is keep your glow separate. It's always good to keep it separate here because then I can adjust it to the side. Now, if you're going to do that, somewhere in your exponential glow node, just untick add source. And now you're only going to have the glow that node creates. And then you're going to hit M on the keyboard again. I'm going to plus this over because it's a light. I'm holding down control to make these little dot nodes. And then you've got your glow. And the reason why I like doing this is because it means that I can throw a grade node underneath it and bring it up and down and adjust the color if I want and all that stuff. And this is so handy because what you'll generally find is, and please, like when you're trying to go on Nukepedia to find nodes to use, try and get one that isn't really heavy. So if I double click this and hit S on the keyboard, I can see what's happening inside of it. Now, if so you can see there wasn't that much stuff happening in there. Some gizmos are trying to do every single option that you might want to do. And even though you're not using them, it's keeping all that stuff live, which means it's going to slow down your script. So that's another advantage of doing it separate over here, exponential glow, because I can now throw a grade node underneath and I understand what these are doing mathematically. Like the multiply, if I put 2 in here, it's going to double all the values. I'm not sure what the intensity is going to do. Oh my god, Nuke 13 has an exponential glow. Hopefully it's pretty good. But if not, just there's honestly loads on Nukepedia. So you can see now I can adjust the glow afterwards using a grade node, which I know kind of exactly what it's doing. So there's our little glow. Now, personally, I don't even like glowing like that most of the time. What I will do is I'll put a dot node in and then actually do a luma keyer. And then key the thing first. So I'll grab the hottest areas, the brightest areas of my luma keyer by making a keyer node. Hit tab, type keyer, connect it in, view the keyer and view the alpha, and then adjust these sliders so that you're selecting the areas you actually want to glow. And the advantage of doing this is now you can actually select exactly what's glowing. Like you might not want everything to glow, maybe you do, but it is super handy to do this. And then we can just put a copy node in, A pipe into our luma key, B pipe into our original, and then we'll do a little pre-mult. So now you've cut out the hottest areas, or the areas that you've selected with the alpha here. And now you just run your glow on this. And again, the cool thing is now you can really pick what you want to glow. So you can see if I do this now, we're not getting any glow of those back ones. So you can really play around with it, which is super handy. You don't always want to do this, but it's really nice. Like if you're doing fire, don't just run a glow over the fire. Like luma key the thing and run it over the certain areas and things. So now we're going to plus this over. Something like this, kind of cool. Perfect. And then what I quite like to do is I would then do like a big broad glow. So maybe I'll do like a quite a tight glow here. And then I'll copy this, paste it over here, and do a big like broad glow. Let's undo add source, like this. So I've got this kind of like quite tight glow and then a broad one as well. And I'm going to hit M on the keyboard to make a merge node set to plus. Plus that over, grade it down a little bit. And there you go. So now to finish up, all you're going to do is throw a God rays node underneath. Set this to RGB. Let's see, is there any red in this image? There might not be any red. Oh, there is some red, let's see. There you go, we're getting the green one, that's cool. So as you can see, you've got this like weird separation out in the green channel. So we can just adjust this a tiny amount just to add a nice bit of separation. And what this is doing is if I go between the blue and green, you can see the green is scaled up slightly. It's not scaled up uniformly though, just mainly on the edges. And then let's go up here, make a little letterbox, and add some grain. For now, again, in the industry, when you're doing shots, we use dash grain node a lot now, but I'm just going to use a regular grain. Let's just set it to this one, and then just up the black slightly. There you go. And there is your NFT. I was actually going to label this how to make an NFT, but I thought it was like super clickbaity and I'm not a professional YouTuber, so I didn't want to do that. But there you go. Hopefully you've got something quite nice. The order of the merge node doesn't affect the result if it's on a plus operation. No, you're exactly right. So the merge node, the B and A don't matter on a merge node. However, you should always have the B pipe going down, because what that allows you to do is if I turn this off, it turns off what's coming into it. Is if I do it this way, it's a bit weird to view this merge node and turn it off and only see glow. That's odd. So B pipe goes down and then you're good. And also, if you ever end up have this, you can just hit Shift X to flick between. And you can see now that A and B is around. So hopefully you guys are in a decent place. Again, you could grade this further if you want to after here or something, like maybe you adjust the grade a little bit even after the glow. That could be kind of cool. And you could adjust colors and all that fun stuff. But hopefully you've got something looking quite nice. I'll leave you guys just to kind of like have a little play around for a few minutes and see how we get on. Any questions at all, just whack them in the chat. Hope everyone's in an okay spot. And also any questions at all as well. Cool, everyone's doing good, I think. And by the way, if you do make anything that like you're really proud of, or just make anything you want to show me, feel free to email me after this thing on my website, on the compositingpro.com website. That'd be really cool. Or I don't know, maybe you could like tweet me if you want as well. Like, give that a go as well if you fancy it. I'm Josh Parks VFX on Twitter. If anyone does want to tweet me what they've made. And then we can try and shill our NFTs to everybody. Try and get the Foundry to start incorporating all that stuff. Cool. Well, it's pretty quiet in the chat, so I'm going to guess that you guys have kind of, you're in a good spot. So let me move on to the next one. So the next one we're going to make is kind of like this thing. This kind of cube and interesting stuff. So how did I actually create this? Well, let's go through it and make it together. Now what we're going to do is we're not actually going to be using Nuke Particles for this, but we are going to use some interesting other setups in Nuke's 3D space. So with that in mind, let's first make a cube. So I'm going to hit Tab, make a cube. And also actually, if you want to keep your stuff running quick, feel free to open up a fresh Nuke, set your project settings to HD, and you'll be good. Someone asked if I'm familiar with optical glow. Optical, I believe, is the same as exponential glow. So yeah, they're basically the same thing. I think it's just different artists, when they made their exponential glow nodes, they've just called them something different. Oh my god, Kietzi, They can now see the particles. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hopefully you remembered kind of how to do some of that stuff and you're in a good spot. Give you one more minute and then we'll start up again. And by the way, have a think. I'm probably going to go slightly over an hour today. Hopefully that's okay with you guys. If you got to drop out, no problem at all. Again, I'll send everyone a link to the recording when it's done. But if you are going to stick around, have a think about any questions that you've got for the end of this thing. Cool. Okay, let's move on. And let me just turn off our letterbox. Oh, and by the way, if you're ever going to do like this letterbox thing that I've done in Nuke, this stuff here, then what you want to do is just set this to none. Like I wouldn't ever, like that won't render that out, by the way, if you set this to full. So just set it to none, render it out, and then in whatever editing package you're using, just add your letterbox in that. Would it be a bad idea to add a crop inside the explode glow node so it's always there? Would you? No. I wouldn't do that. Now that's a good question. So what Eric asks is, hey, should I put a crop inside the exponential glow node so it doesn't go mental? No. The reason why is because if I have this unticked, I mean, you can see it's going insane here. That is too much. But what I would do is I'd put a crop node in there and then just bring this out a little bit like this. And the reason why is because if you want to apply lens distortion to your shot, now you're going to have like sharp edges where your glow was, basically, which isn't good. I'll give you an example of this. If I go here, let's just go to this one and hit crop to format in this, as you can see. And now if I move this over here, what you should be able to see, if my computer wasn't a piece of shit, is you'll be able to see basically a sharp line there. Whereas if, for instance, as you can see, whereas if I set this to undo the crop to format, you can see we've still got, let's just turn this on, we've still got the information there. Now, I don't think turning this off is a good idea either, because your bounding box can go huge. So what I'd do is I'd leave it off and then directly afterwards throw a crop node in and then adjust this to roughly the amount of like extra overscan you need. And then you'll be good. So there you go. Cool. So back onto the new one. We're going to make a cube. So let's hit tab and type cube. I'm just going to scale up a little bit. And for this, I'm going to hold down control. And I'm just going to angle it a little bit weird. So, let's go here. No problem at all, Eric. No problem. And we're just going to rotate this a little bit to its side. Select this again. There you go. It's kind of cool. Cool. So adjust your cube kind of at a rough angle like this. And then we're going to drop a camera in. And film an interesting part of this thing. Now, what we could do, if we wanted this camera to look here, you could also connect an axis node in. And then just move the axis around, and now you can choose where your camera's looking, which can be quite handy. So we could just do that as well, just to get a little bit more fancy. And now if I move my camera back, what you should see is it's always going to look at that point. As you can see, which can be quite useful. So now we've got that, let's render this thing out. So we're going to hit tab, scale and render node, connect the scene into the cube, and the camera into the camera. So now we've got can't see anything at the moment because we haven't got texture on it. Now we've got a square. I'm just going to move my camera back a little bit. Let's just adjust this so it centers up a little. Cool, perfect. Don't know. Actually, I might need to rotate this a little more. There you go. Something like that's going to be kind of cool. So get like an odd angle like this and you should be good. So now we've got this. What I want to do is I actually want to render the wireframe of the cube. So how do I do that? Well, there's actually a node that maybe you guys haven't used yet. So if we hit tab and type wireframe, and it's a shader. So if you connect this into any geometry, like you can use the read geo node, whatever it is you want to kind of render the geometry out, the wireframe out of. I use this I was working on an advert once with this horse that was running, and they wanted it to be like a UI horse. So we used this. I got the read geo node, brought in the alembic for the horse, and then had him running, which is kind of cool. So there you go. There's our wireframe cube now, and we can adjust the rows and columns, as you can see, if you want to have less or more. So again, you can run this on any geo you want. You can use it on UI stuff, which is quite handy. So to recap, what I did is I've made a cube. I positioned it in Nuke's 3D space. I made a scanner and render node, connected in the scene into the cube. I made a camera, connected it into the camera bit, moved the camera away, and then made an axis node and connected it to the look. And what this is going to do now is wherever I move the axis, the camera's going to look, which is quite handy. Cool. Everyone okay so far? I'm kind of just honestly just whack a question in the chat if you get stuck at all. So now we've got this. Actually, I'll show you something else that's quite cool. You can also use a node called a procedural noise node. And what this will do is it'll basically like make this thing wobble a little bit if I play around with the gain and the speed and the size a little bit. There you go. So you can see now you get this weird wobbly thing, which again you could render out a little bit, and you can adjust the gain here, so you can get this kind of like wobbly cube over time if you adjust the speed. And I adjust the gain a little bit more. There you go. So that might be able to give you something cool. I'm not going to use it, but you totally could if you want to. So now we've got our cube. I kind of want to make this like fake depth thing now, this stuff here. And to do that, I use the God rays node again. Yeah, you could. Okay, so what Getsy's saying is, why not just connect like the look to the cube? You could totally do that as well. The only thing is, it kind of, I can't then position it. Oh, actually, it doesn't work. There you go. That's why. It's not smart enough to let me do that. There might be a way, but it's not smart enough. So again, just axis node does the job. So there you go. Also, another great thing about the axis node is I can adjust this to my heart's content. I mean, if I really wanted to make it look at the cube, what we could do is I could set this to like vertex selection here, and then I could go like snap to point. I could make this snap to my selection, and then it would instantly point the camera there. So that's another method, but for now I'm just kind of manually going to adjust it so that I can line it up myself. So if you did want to point at the cube, you could just select the vertices and then adjust the, double click the axis, go here and match selected position, and then the camera will look at where you've selected. So now we've got this, let's do our little bit here where we've got this stuff going back. So again, for this I've just used the God rays. So if I make a God rays node, and I can adjust the center wherever I want. So what I was doing is like roughly putting it where I think this these two lines would meet, that back point would be, and just scale down. And I mean, you get some kind of like interesting stuff just with that, right? Like you could do some really cool stuff with this as well, if you wanted to start kind of going a bit crazy with it. But we're not going to be doing that this time. But again, have a play around. Like that's the beauty of having a bit of free time. Hope you got some time for the holidays and you can play around with this stuff. And then we're just going to lower the amount of steps. Oh, sorry. Lower the amount of steps here. And then we're going to plus this over. And now you can see you start getting this like box within a box within a box. And you can adjust the center point, as you can see. And up the steps, you're going to start getting this really cool kind of like feeling. And if I bring it all the way down, you'll see it goes all the way to that point then. So you can adjust these to set how much you want to go. And you can adjust the steps so you can see how many lines you want. So now we've got this kind of interesting box, which is pretty cool. So let's defocus it as well. That'd be really great. So I'm going to put a dot node in here. Make an expression underneath the scanner and render node. Set it to depth again. 1 divided by depth dot z. And then we're going to throw a Z defocus in. Same as last time, we set this to depth. Turn off my GPU because it kicks up a fuss. Maybe let's just pick a point that's close to us and then whack up the size and maximum. Then we could play around with this further. Cool. So now you start getting some interesting kind of nice defocus on your wireframe of your cube. And then you're going to start getting this kind of effect, which is kind of interesting. And you could even defocus this as well if you wanted to. Actually, we could just nudge this, push it slightly out if you wanted to play around with that. Cool, so now we've got that. Maybe let's go for a different color this time. So let's throw a grade node in. Now actually I've forgotten something. Let's make this script efficient. So let's double click the scalar and render node. Set this to off in the shader. So now we're not rendering motion vectors. And we know that because our pink and blue little boxes here have disappeared. Awesome. And from this point down, we don't need the depth pass anymore. So we're just going to hit tab, type remove, and set this to keep RGBA. And now we keep our script nice and efficient. And then we're going to grade. So let's go for a different color this time. Whoa. And you can just gamma down. When you gamma down, it's going to increase the contrast and also the saturation slightly. Just adjust this. And let's actually, you know what, it'd be cool if we could see the inside more. So I'm going to grade up these. There you go. So now you can start seeing this kind of stuff. And then maybe we can make it look like this thing's projected. So if I hit tab, type God rays. And I'm going to bring the center up and scale down again. And hit M on the keyboard to make a merge. And we're going to plus this over. So we're faking it to be light. And we could do this kind of from whatever angle we wanted to, really. I'm going to make that a bit darker and blur it touch to make it a bit more diffuse. By the way, the cool thing about the God rays is, watch this. If I rotate this cube, the God rays will adjust so it still look like it's being projected. So if I rotate this round, you should see in a second. Actually, one sec, let me turn my ZD focus off. If I rotate this round, you should see that the God rays adjust. And let me turn my blur off. And this one here. See, as I bring this around now, the God rays adjust. So it looked like it's actually projecting this thing if it was spinning, which is pretty cool. So you can do all sorts of interesting stuff with the God rays. It's going to be quite handy. Actually, it's kind of cool because I can see how it's going to look. It's a cool angle. Let's go with that one. Bit of ZD focus again to make everything look good. And then we've got this, so we're just going to blur it. Now, you can see here that I have got the steps and I could up the samples, but I kind of want it to be softer on the edges anyway, so I'm just going to blur it. And that should kind of fix a lot of that issue. Like this. And then like last time, let's do some Expo Glow. I'm just going to do it on everything this time. Well, that's kind of cool. Then we're going to plus this over. This, maybe we adjust this a little bit, and then we're going to grade it here, maybe add a little contrast again, something like that. Let's throw our God rays node in again for our chromatic aberration. So you could do stuff like this as well, by the way, can you see? And then you could do the blue channel in another one. So you've got this like crazy stuff. So now what am I doing? I'm scaling up in the green channel. And then I'm scaling up in the blue channel, the next one, at different scales. So then you can get this weird kind of stuff. And you could even try and go in a little bit or something. That's kind of cool. Let's do something like that. I'm not so sure on our stuff going down, but I'll keep it on anyway, just so you can see. And then let's put some grain on. So again, in the industry we use dash grain. I'm just going for something that looks kind of interesting. So let's do something like this and whack the grain right up. Again, let's letterbox it. And there you go. There's your little NFT, which is kind of cool. And the cool thing is, by the way, let's keep things nice and efficient again. So let's work out where our bounding box went out of control. So here it's gone over. Double click here. Set this to B. So now it's going to take the bounding box from up here when we're okay with it. Oh, actually, we don't want that. We do want union. Because otherwise it's going to crop this stuff. And then we're going to go here. And this is where it gets a bit bigger. So we're going to set it to B. And then we're just going to throw a crop node underneath here. Keep things, again, nice and efficient. So we've removed all the passes we don't need. And we've removed all the bounding box stuff we don't need. Then we'll do a little grain thing, and we're good. So there you go. Some interesting kind of stuff to play around with. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. Oh, actually, let's put the crop here. That's going to fix this. So there you go. Hopefully that gives you some ideas of stuff you can play around with in Nuke. I wanted this to kind of be something that people could start with just without any kind of prior... I mean, you still need to know a bit of Nuke, but it's something that you probably wouldn't really be doing Nuke at work, so it's kind of just quite interesting. And again, I had some free time to play around with this stuff once, and it's just kind of cool. Like, again, if I rotate this thing now, I'm going to turn off my Z defocus to keep things nice and quick. But if I rotate this, you can see the whole cube updates. And if your glow's going a bit crazy, what you need to do is just put a crop node before the glow, and it will stop it from pinging most of the time. That's kind of the trick to do it. So now what you should see now is you can see we've got our cube spinning around with our look, which is pretty cool. And I know it seems so kind of like this isn't what you'd expect to do as a Nuke compositor, but actually it's quite handy being able to do this stuff. So like on Star Trek once I had to help out with the UI on some shots and things, and it's surprising how often this stuff can come up. And you can kind of rescue some stuff, especially in ads and that kind of stuff. Like, if you can just play around with this and like concept some stuff, it can be pretty useful for a whole bunch of things. So it's worth definitely getting some ideas around it, because you're going to use some like nodes in ways that maybe you haven't used them before, which just again tests how well you actually know Nuke and stuff. So there goes. There's 2 little projects for you that you can create from scratch and have a go at doing on yourself. Again, you'll have a recording of this if you want to watch it back at some point as well. Hope that was useful. So now I've got like 15 more minutes. If anyone's got any questions industry related at all, or anything they want to ask, now's the time to ask it. It's absolutely fine to. And again, please feel free to just ask whatever it is you want to know. Is my fire still going? Let's have a look. Yeah. Just waiting for the chat. Any questions at all? Industry questions? If not, by the way, just feel free. And if you don't want to kind of ask someone here, just after the call, after this session, just please feel free to drop me an email with any question you've got about anything. Like, I remember what it was like starting out, and even like I remember it was like being a junior and a mid, and there's maybe stuff that you don't feel like you can ask at work like that. Honestly, it's absolutely fine if you do have any questions, and you can just reach out and email me. No problem at all. Oh, someone's got... thanks for sending an update on your Nuke keying course, which Vish said. Oh, wow, that's kind of cool. Do you have any plans for more courses? Oh my God, Vish. I need to give you that £10 later for asking that question. So something I'm actually working on at the moment. Oh my God, maybe I can do a little sneak peek. So let me close some stuff down. Look at this lizard. So at the moment, actually, I'm trying to work out how this is going to run, but yes, I'm working on a new project right now, a new course. Unfortunately, work's getting in the way because the industry's going mental, which is great, but again, it's pretty tricky to get everything in there. But yeah, it's going to be basically like a CG lizard with all the passes and everything, full deep and all that fun stuff, and it's going to look something like this kind of thing, which is pretty cool. So that's what I'm currently working on. It took me ages to find another bit of CG that I wanted to use, and a decent project. So I finally found one. I'm currently talking to an ILM animator as well, actually, about getting another one. But this is the one that's probably going to happen next. So if you have any other ideas, by the way, about the course, like I'm thinking of trying to make it live or something, and have like weekly meetings, because I don't want to make like everything that you need to know about CG is kind of in the Nuke CG course, like pre-recorded one that's on my website. That's the point of it. But this, I kind of want it to be like a live cohort and stuff. So yeah, anyway, there you go. That's probably going to be the next one. That's the one I'm working on in the background. So next up, thanks Rich for asking that. Eric, are there any tips on moving assets in the 3D viewer? The handles are so small and difficult. Well, in the new Nuke, which one of my students had, that's fixed. Yeah, it is just a pain in the ass, if I'm honest with you, Eric, and loads of people complain about it. It seems to be fixed in the new Nuke, which is great. So yeah, there you go. Someone asked, do you use spline warp? No, not really, Robert. What I use instead, let me show you another little trick here, is ST maps to do my warping. So if you make an ST map, and do, oh, why did I copy and paste it? Why divided by height. This should be a plus 0.5. This should be a plus 0.5 in brackets, but this is okay for now. So what I do is I make a transform mask node underneath here, like this. And if I do a little rotor shape, so I personally find spline warp's quite kind of like cumbersome. So this is how I do it instead. Do this. Let's say we rotate or move up a little bit. So watch this. If I grab this and connect it to the checkerboard, this is how it looks, which looks pretty crap, right? Because you've got this like soft blurring. But if I apply it to an ST map, now you've got a warping. So you can actually warp with ST maps, and I find it way quicker and more efficient. So there you go. That's a little trick that I use for warping stuff. Don't do it this way. Do it this way. Cool. Next question. Any cool tricks? Yeah, there you go, man. That's the trick. Why does Nuke take the cache from the outside in and out while playback? I've got no idea, man. It is what it is. Could you give some advice of a good course of match moving? Unfortunately, I'm not a big match moving person. If I'm honest with you, we're lucky enough to have, every company I've worked at, we have a match move department that does all of that for us. So me as a compo, I get supplied a camera, which is pretty nice. So I can't camera track in Nuke at all, really. I hit auto, I know that I can up the number of features, and I can remove the ones that kind of aren't tracking so well, but that's kind of about all I know. So if it doesn't work with auto, I've got no idea how to do it. So unfortunately, I'm not so good on the match moving stuff for Nuke. But I mean, I know there's probably a load out there. So the one thing I'd say is, like, whenever you're doing a course, make sure the person's actually done what you want to do. Like, if you're watching a match move course, for instance, because you want to get into match move in the film industry, find one that's done by someone who's actually in the film industry. Because people, ads, TV and film, I mean, TV and film are quite similar now, but ads and film are definitely fairly different. And there might be kind of some different techniques that the film people are using. So yeah, it's always worth just trying to find courses that are actually done by the people. Always late to Nuke Particles, though not for this lesson. Sometimes when I render particles, they flicker just immediately after scan and render node. So if that's happening, it can be two things. If your particles are flickering, you could set that aliasing, or you need to throw in a node called a particles settings node, like this, underneath your particles. What this does is it basically does subframes. So you can now do kind of like 1, 1.5, and then 2. If you up this. Now it's going to be way slower, but this is a really good way just to like calculate like in between frames. So if you're getting that stepping stuff in your Nuke Particles, just put a particle setting node in and then just up that. Cool, someone's got a good match move course for the Simfires, pretty good. John is a new compositor, however recently picked interest in effects with Houdini. Is it worth pursuing as an added skill, or do I focus on getting better as a compositor? So this is a tricky question. I was teaching at a university in Denmark like a few weeks ago, and they asked this same question. And I would say, now again, everything I say now isn't going to be based on how happy you're going to be or what you enjoy the most, right? So take what I say with a pinch of salt. But I would say it's generally going to be better to like double down on compositing until you're mid-senior, and then start picking up other little side things and like effects Houdini and stuff. And by the way, it can be really great. Like there's a compositor called, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's like Chris Turner. It's not Chris Fry. I think it's Chris Turner. And he picked up Houdini stuff. And he was doing some awesome stuff in Nuke because he'd like learnt techniques in Houdini that he could apply back to Nuke, which was really awesome. So I would say, again, like there's nothing stopping you playing around with it. But I do think given how like TV is now as well, where they kind of expecting you to specialize, I would try and specialize if you can until you get to the level you want it in compositing, and then kind of diverge. But again, everything I've just said isn't based on how happy you're going to be doing that. If you really love comping and effects and you don't want to be a full-time comper, then it makes sense to do what you're doing, John. But if like I was going to give you the best like strategy, I would say, and you want to work on the higher end stuff, it's probably just double down on compositing. It should be good. Cool. Okay then, that seems like it's the last question we've got. I'll give it one more minute, and then if nothing else pops up, I will end the stream and leave you guys to it. And just so you know, so yeah, again, the recording is going to be on here. If you did want some more Nuke Particle stuff, by the way, and you're interested in this, I've got another course on my website that just takes you through everything. It's less abstract like this, and it's more kind of like snow, rain, smoke, embers, and that kind of stuff you can you're going to be using Nuke Particles for on the actual comp job, and that can be found again on my website if you did enjoy playing around with Nuke Particles and it's new to you. Cool. So let's leave it there. I think that's it for the questions. So again, hopefully that was useful. I really enjoyed doing this stuff actually, because like I kick my newsletter out and I never actually get to kind of talk one-on-one with you guys so much. So it's really cool to do this. And if there's anything you can suggest that you'd like me to add to my newsletter, like to make it better, I don't know. Some people have said Discord channel, but I don't know if I've got the time to kind of manage it. But if that is something you guys would find useful, please let me know. Any ideas at all? Like, please just. It's just me doing this thing. I haven't got a team, and I'm a full-time comper as well. So it's just in my spare time, kind of making stuff I feel like should be out there. And it's frustrating sometimes seeing the stuff that is out there. It's like, no, this isn't correct way of doing it. So a lot of the stuff I make is based on that. So yeah, again, hopefully you enjoyed this. And I'd like to maybe do one in summer or something. I'll have a think about what we can do. And again, if you've got any ideas of what you'd like me to cover next time, just let me know. Have a happy holidays wherever you are in the world. And the industry's booming right now. If you haven't had a pay rise for a while, try and get a pay rise. Industry rates are going up quite a lot everywhere in the world. So really make sure you're making the most of right now. Because and in my opinion, I think it's going to be like this for at least 3 to 5 years personally, given all the competition between all the streaming websites. So fingers crossed. Now's honestly an awesome time to get in. If you can, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully with your families all well as well. And I'll speak to you soon.